With this video, we're going to go over the changes you can make to a member's individual billing record. So to begin with, we're going to start here on our member billing page. And you have a couple of different options of how to get to an individual member's record. So to begin with, we do have this search bar here. You can search by the member's last name or by their invoice number. So if we were to type a last name in here, it's going to bring up any of the member billing profiles that there are, and then also if there's any event invoices for members with that last name. And you'd be able to click this and head right into an individual billing record. The other option you have here is under transactions to view one member's transactions. This page is going to list all of the members in your system with a link, so you could click right to a profile and you can go from here right into an individual member's billing record. So before we go over the changes you can actually make, we'll first take a look at the information that we're seeing. So here at the top, every member is going to have their own member timeline listed. So this is going to give you a visual representation of the invoices that they have, when they start and end, and whether or not they're paid. So each invoice is going to have its own line. It'll have a starting and ending dash, and it's going to correspond with the dates that it's effective and expiring within the calendar year. The green line is letting us know where we're currently at with the date. If the line is listed as black, that means it's a paid invoice. If it's red, that means it's an unpaid invoice. They'll also have a number at the beginning of each line, and this number corresponds to the actual invoice that it's for and the data you'll be able to find down below. This data is going to reflect what we're seeing here, but it's going to give us more information than just our visible timeline. So we have a few different columns. Our date is going to show us the transaction date. By default, this date's going to be the same as the effective date of the invoice. So we can see here, this invoice has an effective date of 5/11/17, and so the transaction date is 5/11/17. We are able to change this so that the transaction date will be the same as the posting date, which is when that invoice is created. So if you would like this change, please just let us know. The next column is letting you know the member's name. Then you have the entry type, which is what kind of invoice it is or whether or not it's a payment. So if it's an invoice and doesn't have anything after it, that means it's a new member invoice, and that is the initial invoice appearing on a member's record. We also have ND, which is for a non-dues invoice. Non-dues invoices will not be reflected up here on the timeline as they are not representative of the membership term, but they will still be listed down here below. And then we also have R, which are for renewal invoices. And that is just letting you distinguish which is which. After each invoice type, you'll see the invoice number. So this will be different for each invoice and will also correspond to its timeline mark as well. For each invoice that is a member billing invoice, you'll then have the effective date and the expiration date, showing you the term that that membership invoice is for. If it's paid, it will have the paid symbol showing up after it. If it's not paid, then it won't have anything listed after its expiration date. The non-dues invoices, again, don't have effective or expiration dates since they don't relate to the term, but they will still have the invoice number listed and also let you know if they are paid. Separate from the invoices, we also have payments. So if it has a PMT, that means it's a payment. You'll be able to distinguish between check payments and credit card payments based on the PMT and then what comes after. If it's a check, it will have a CK and a number letting you know the check number. If it's a credit card payment, below it will have TXN for transaction and list the transaction number that it's receiving from your payment gateway. And then you'll also be able to see what invoice the payment is applied to. So you can keep track of how all of this is connecting within the system. The next column is giving you the due date. So for invoices, that is letting you know when the invoice is marked as due. And then after that, the invoice becomes past due. The amount is the amount that either the invoice is for or that the payment was for. You have a running balance at the bottom. Red means that it is an unpaid balance. And then if it's 0, it will appear in black for paid out. You then have this column for emails sent and opened. So this is going to let you know the last time emails were sent in regards to these invoices. For payments, you will also be able to see that, but instead of RNWL for renewal or new for new, those, by the way, are letting you know what type of notification email was sent. Payments, you'll see the RCPT, letting you know when you last sent a receipt to this member. Then you have your actions column, which is giving you the different options that you have for making changes to these records. Before we get to that, the other thing I would show you then is the Show Voids button. So you can see you do have the option to void transactions. I would caution you cannot void an invoice if it's marked as paid. So we can see here this is paid and the invoice link is not available. So you do have to void a payment before you can void an invoice. But when you void something, it does not completely remove it from the system. It will still be listed. So if you have voided payments but you'd like to see how they would have applied in the past, you can click the Show Voids button. You'll see here in more of a grayed out text, we do have all of those past payments and invoices that were voided in the system. If you added a void note giving the reason for the void, then that would appear here as well beneath the payment or invoice that is listed. Once you're done looking at the voids, you can again click Hide Voids and your billing record will go back to normal. Now that we've taken a look at this information, we'll go ahead and look at the different options that you have for the invoices and payments. So we'll go ahead and take a look at one of these renewal invoices and click the CHG link. This is for change. And you'll see this first page we come to has the join date and the invoice number and the member's name, giving us that basic info. That is nothing we're able to change, but it is keeping that record for us. The transaction date, which again was that date we saw on the far left, we are able to manually change this. So you could update that right here if we want to do that, and that's going to change when we click back out after submitting. We also have the due date, so if we decide to give this member more time to pay, we could move this out as far as we would like. And again, that will update on the next page as soon as we submit these saved changes. Then there's this button for is this a renewal? So this was a renewing invoice, but if we uncheck this box, then it's now going to appear as a new member invoice back on our billing page. Same thing, if you had a new member invoice and then check this box, it would then become a renewal invoice. So this can affect the different messages that got sent out to it, as well as the way it appears in reports. So you do have this option to change between, but that's really up to you. Note for upper right is going to be a note you're able to add to the invoice. That is then going to appear in the upper right of that invoice. And then the GL account you can ignore. We'll go over that more if you're ever using QuickBooks, but if not, then you won't be seeing this field. And we do have this second change link, but before we go into that, let's go ahead and take a look at these changes. So if we click Submit, we can see we did move this transaction date out by a month, and we also moved this due date out by a year. So those changes are now reflected. If we use this INV link, which is for invoice, and click here for our PDF output, we are going to be able to see that upper right-hand note that we did add to the invoice. So that gives you an idea of where that would be appearing. We'll go ahead and head back in. We'll click the CHG link again, and then now we'll take a look at this second CHG link for renewal terms included. And here we're able to see the effective and expiration date for our invoice. So if we're wanting to change these actual dates for the invoice, here's where we would do it. So let's say we wanted to adjust the invoice so it's good for 1 year later. We could adjust this to 2020, and then when we save this change, it's going to automatically adjust on the next page and on our PDF invoice. If for whatever reason you want to adjust the dues, either to make it more or less, or add or remove a registration fee, you could do that here as well. This is only going to affect this one invoice, so the next time they renew, their dues amount would be for the same amount as normally set up. If you do have any membership add-ons, they'll be listed here, and you can either add or remove them and change the amounts once more. If you decide you don't want to go forward with the changes you make, you can always click Reset. You'll see it resets. And then regardless of if you made changes or not, you can always click submit. It'll bring us back to this page, and then we can click submit again. Before we do, I will point out there's a view changes button. So if you ever want to see the changes that were made to an invoice, that is an option for you. And then we'll submit again to go ahead and head back to the overall billing page. But since we don't need this, we'll head back to our billing menu. Again, view one member's transactions and head back to our member. So that is the options you have to change an invoice. Similarly, you're also able to change a payment. You can see that you're able to change where the payment was applied. So we could switch what invoice our payment is listed for. You can also then mark it as a credit or leave it unmarked for it to appear as a payment still. We'll go ahead and mark a credit just so we can see what that looks like. If you'd like to change the payment date, you're able to do that right here. And you can also add a note to the payment. If it is a check payment, you can add the check number right here. And you can also change the amount of the payment if needed. So we'll go ahead and take a look at this. We can see now our payment is a credit, but we also have that check number that we entered right here. And we can see we still have that $10 listed. And this is now showing us the difference between a credit and a payment, and also what that check number field is going to look like for us. Other than that, again, we do have the void option. So if you ever choose to void something, you'll have a box asking for a reason and then be able to void it. The INV link we looked at briefly. Gives you these different options here. You can click for a PDF output, which is going to let you see what the invoice your member is seeing looks like. You'll also have a click here to send an invoice email. So this will let you send an individual invoice email to this member for this record. We do go more in depth on these emails in a different video, but all you need to do is click here to send notification, and that email would be sent to your member. You also have this past due button, which gives you similar options, but if the invoice is past due, you'll also see another option to click here to send a past due email. With our payments then, again, we do have the void option, and then we also have a receipt option. So you can enter the email that you'd like the receipt to go to. If there is an email on file for the member, this will be filled in by default. And then this verbiage here will be the verbiage that you have entered for your receipts, which you can again learn more about in another one of our videos. You can also click to see the PDF of what that receipt is going to look like, and then all you need to do is send receipt email, and that will be sent to your member. Back on the billing info screen, we do have a few other options here. If your member is up for renewal, you can click the option to create renewal invoice record now. This will create a single invoice record for only this member that will be added for their next term date. You also have the enter payment option, and this is what you're going to use if you're entering a check payment. So if you had a check sent in by a member, you could come in here, choose the invoice that the check is being applied to. If it is a check, you'd leave the is this a credit blank. The payment date is going to default to today's date, but you could adjust that as needed. The notes, again, you could write a note if you wanted to, such as paid late. Again, you could put a check number here in this field, and then the amount is going to automatically autofill with the same amount that the invoice is for, but say they only did a partial payment, you could update it to reflect that as well. Once you click submit, we're going to see our payment here. It's a payment, it's a check payment. We have our paid late note right here, and then we can also see that it was applied to invoice 1517. Which is listed up here. And we can see it's only a partial payment. So this invoice then is still marked as unpaid due to that partial payment. If you ever have a member who is trying to pay by credit card when speaking to you, you do have the process payment via gateway. Again, you're going to confirm which invoice you'd like to apply the payment to. You'll have an option to write a note, and you can change the amount. When you continue then, you'll submit this information, make sure that's right, and then you'll be taken to your payment gateway. We do not have one currently set up with our test system, so I can't take you through that entire process, but you will then be able to securely process that payment with your gateway and then be sent back within to your site. You do have your enter non-dues invoice option. So as I said, you can see that some of these non-dues invoices are for items unrelated to dues. If you click this here, you're going to be taken into a page like this. If you have a list of non-dues items pre-set up, you can just go ahead, choose from the list, and add item from list. If it's a new item or something specific to that member, you could choose to add item not in list. This is going to give you an option then to name your item, which is what it will appear on the invoice line. Choose your quantity, and then also select an amount for the invoice. Once you do that, you can click submit. It's added to your total here, and then once you have everything added you would like, you can go ahead and continue. You're going to be able to set a posting date, a due date, add any notes to the invoice if you would like. Again, that upper right note. And then if it is a donation or should be marked as anonymous, those are options that you'll have. If not, you can continue. And we can see that our non-dues invoice has been created. We can also take a look at the invoice and then send an invoice email right from this page to notify the member that they need to pay this invoice. So that's going to be the same as we saw previously, just letting us click here to send non-dues notifications to send the email to that member. Then we can go back to this member's billing info and be back where we were before. And then we can now see this additional non-dues invoice that's been added to the record. We also have a create statement option. So if you'd like to create a statement for your members, you can choose the member. If you're doing it within the member's specific record, it will default to it having to be that member. You can choose your statement date and then the beginning range for the transactions you would like to have show up. You can really apply these additional options if you're doing a batch statement. So in this case, we'll go ahead and leave them be since we're doing it for this individual member and click submit. And then we do have a PDF of the statement available. So we're able to view that, but then you'll also be able to send that out to your member. So we'll go ahead and head back into our members record one more time. You do also have the option from this page to edit member info. This will take you into your member database where you can quickly make any changes needed. And you can always head back to this member's billing info to jump right back in here. And then finally, you have the drop member option. So if you ever wanted to drop a member, you could do it from their billing page. You're going to be able to give a drop reason, a drop date, and then proceed to drop this member. We're going to go ahead and keep this member at this time, but that is an option for you. So these are the biggest things you can do with this individual billing info page. If you do have any further questions or you're confused on any points, go ahead and take a look at the help desk or feel free to send us in a ticket and we'd be happy to help you further on that.